Good morning, business. Good morning, ma'am. Chapter 9 International Trade. International Trade Introduction. International trade is an exchange of capital, goods, and service across international borders or territories because there are a needs or want to goods or service. In most countries, such trade represents a significant share of gross domestic product. What is international trade? International trade is an exchange involving a goods or service conducted between at least two different countries. The exchanges can be import or export. An import refers to a good or service brought into domestic country. An export refers to a good or service sold to a foreign country. Example of international trade policies. Most economic favor free trade agreements because of the potential of gains from trade and comparative advantage. This is because these economies believe that government intervention will reduce of efficiency of the markets. Yet, many governments introduce protectionist policies to protect domestic producer from foreign producer. There are a true major protectionist policy. Form of economic linkage include international trade is method of economic interaction between international entities. An example of economic linkage other form of economic linkage include example number 1 foreign financial investment, example number 2 multinational corporation, and example number 3 foreign employees. The growth in this form of economic linkage is known as globalization. Why does international trade occur? International trade occurs because one country enjoys a comparative advantage in each the production of certain good or service, especially if the opportunity cost of producing that good or service is lower for the country than any other country. If a country opts not to trade with other countries, it is considered to be an autarky. Important quotas. An important quota refer to a legal limit on quantity of a good that can be imported within a country. Generally, important quotas are administrative and licensing agreement. An important quota leads to a similar resource as a tariff. However, instead of generally tax, revenue, and fees other feed to a license holder of quota rent. Tariffs. A tariff is an excise that it's paid on a sale of important goods. Tariffs are put in place to discourage important and protect domestic production and are occur of government revenue. A tariff prices the prices received by domestic producer and the price paid by domestic customers. Tariff revenue did wage losses by because they increase efficiency as some mutually beneficial trade or go unexpected and an economy resources are wasted of efficiency production. Thank you.
So, for the continuation of our report, I'm Lourdes Michena, and first I'm going to tackle about static gains from trade. Static gains from trade are measured by the increase in the utility or level of welfare when there is opening of trade between the countries. In modern economics, increase in utility or welfare is measured through indifference curves. Next is dynamic gains from trade. These dynamic gains from trade refer to the gains from trade that accrue to the countries over time because trade induces economic growth of a country and brings increase in efficiency in the use of resources by a country. So on the other hand, dynamic gains from trade relate to economic development of the economy, specialization of the country for the production of best suited commodities, which result in a large volume of quality production which promotes growth. Thus, the extension of domestic market to foreign market will accelerate economic growth. So there are three major arguments for a protectionist trade policy, and these are national security, jobs creation, protection of infant industries. Next is the gains from international trade. So what is gains from international trade? International trade confers a good deal of benefit on the trading countries. According to the comparative cost theory, if different countries' specialization on the basis of comparative cost of commodities, it would enable them to make optimum use of their sources and thereby add to their output, income, and welfare of their people. Historical perspective of international free trade. International trade has a rich history, starting with barter system being replaced by the mercantilism in the 16th and 17th centuries. The 18th century saw the shift toward liberalism. Fixed exchange rate. What is fixed exchange rate? A fixed exchange rate, often called a pegged exchange rate. It is a type of exchange rate regime in which a currency value is fixed and pegged by a monetary authority against the value of another currency, a basket of other currencies, or another measure of value such as gold. Also, currencies with fixed exchange rates are usually pegged to a more stable or globally prominent currency such as the euro or the US dollar. For example, the Danish krone is pegged to the euro at a central rate of 746.38 kroner per 100 euro. So that is fixed exchange rate. So there are obstacles to free trade. The three major barriers to international trade are natural barriers such as distance and language, tariff barriers or taxes on imported goods, and non-tariff barriers. The non-tariff barriers to trade include import quotas, embargoes, binational regulations, and exchange controls. So what is a foreign exchange rate? A foreign exchange rate is a price of the domestic currency stated in terms of another currency. In other words, a foreign exchange rate compares one currency with another to show their relative values. So, example of foreign exchange. It is also regarded as the value of one currency in terms of another currency. For example, an interbank exchange rate of 91 Japanese yen to the United States dollar means that 91 yen will be exchanged for each US dollar will be exchanged for each 91 yen. So that's an example of foreign exchange rate. And thank you.
9 factors that influence currency exchange rates. Number 1, inflation. Inflation is the relative purchasing power of a currency compared to other currencies. For example, it might cost 1 unit of currency to buy an apple in one country but cost 1,000 units of a different currency to buy the same apple in a country with higher inflation. Such differentials in inflation are the foundation of why different currencies have different purchasing powers and hence different currency rates. As such, countries with low inflation typically have stronger currencies compared to those with higher inflation rates. Number 2, interest rates. Interest rates are tightly tied to inflation and exchange rates. Different countries' central banks use interest rates to modulate inflation within the country. For example, establishing higher interest rates attracts foreign capital, which bolsters the local currency rates. However, if these rates remain too high for too long, inflation can start to creep up, resulting in a devalued currency. As such, central bankers must consistently adjust interest rates to balance benefits and drawbacks. Public debt. Most countries finance their budgets using large-scale deficit financing. In other words, they borrow to finance economic growth. If this government debt outpaces economic growth, it can drive up inflation by deterring foreign investment from entering the country. Two factors that can devalue a currency. In some cases, a government might print money to finance debt, which can also drive up inflation. Political stability. A stable country attracts more foreign investment, which helps prop up the currency rate. The opposite is also true. Poor political stability devalues a country's currency exchange rate. Political stability also affects local economic drivers and financial policies, two things that can have long-term effects on a currency's exchange rate. Invariably, countries with more robust political stability like Switzerland have stronger and higher valued currencies. Economic health or performance is another way exchange rates are determined. For example, a country with low unemployment rates means its citizens have more money to spend, which helps establish a more robust economy. Balance of trade. Balance of trade or terms of trade is the relative difference between a country's imports and exports. For example, if a country has a positive balance of trade, it means that its exports exceed its imports. In such a case, the inflow of foreign currency is higher than the outflow. Current account deficit. The current account deficit is closely related to the balance of trade. In this scenario, a country's balance of trade is compared to those of its trading partners. If a country's current account deficit is higher than that of a trading partner, this can weaken its currency relative to that country's currency. Confidence, speculation, sometimes currencies are affected by the confidence or lack thereof traders have in a currency. Currency changes from speculation tend to be irrational, abrupt, and short-lived. For example, traders may devalue a currency based on an election outcome, especially if the result is perceived as unfavorable for trade or economic growth. Government intervention. Governments have a collection of tools at their disposal through which they can manipulate their local exchange rate. Primarily, central banks are known to adjust interest rates by foreign currency, influence local lending rates, print money, and use other tools to modulate currency exchange rates. Managing foreign exchange risk. Spot transactions. Spot transactions or spot contracts are probably the easiest way to manage foreign investment risk. A spot transaction is a single foreign exchange transaction where you purchase and settle the amount on the spot. It provides very little notice time and a shorter window for risk. So if you're happy with the current foreign exchange rate, you can book in a conversion with a spot transaction. A forward exchange contract. allows your business to guard itself against price fluctuations by locking down an exchange rate at the current price, which is valid until a date set by you. While this contract provides peace of mind that you won't actively lose money on your foreign exchange, it does mean that you can take advantage of this positive shift in foreign exchange rates. Natural hedge. For businesses that are already selling overseas, foreign currency bank accounts can also provide a great way to provide a natural hedge. For these businesses, rather than receiving in USD and converting to AUD, you can leave your USD balance in your USD foreign currency account. Foreign currency bank accounts. A simple way to manage foreign currency risk involves setting up a foreign currency account. Then, to hedge against risk, simply deposit the required amount plus a nominated surplus into the account. This method allows you to make the most of FX rates when they're strong. By converting and holding the foreign currency until you need to make payment, it also ensures the correct funds will always be available and takes into account the potential fluctuation of the currency. What is foreign exchange risk? In simple terms, foreign exchange risk is the risk imposed on a business financial performance by changes in currency exchange rates. These fluctuating exchange rates can damage a business profitability by eating into margins. What is foreign investment? Foreign investment is when a domestic investor decides to purchase ownership of an asset in a foreign country. It involves cash flows moving from one country to another to execute the transaction. If the ownership stake is large,